It is 1 o'clock. We will call the Rules Committee to order. At this time, Counselor Dobbins, you want to bless the meeting, please?
Father, thank you for this time that we are dedicated to serving our people's needs, and we only do it under your leadership, that we use discernment at all times as we make decisions and gather the information in order to make decisions we hope are pleasing in your sight. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Roll call, Shelley.
Joe Berg.
Ani.
Brian Warner.
Ani.
Gil England.
Ani.
Dawson.
Here.
Harley Buzzard.
Here.
Sean Crittenden.
Ani.
Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Frankie Hargis. Wanda Hatfield. Rex Jordan.
Here.
Dick Lay.
Ani.
Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Mary Bakershaw.
Here.
E.O. Smith.
Here.
Denise Taylor. Here. Victoria Vasquez. David Walkenstick. You have a quorum.
Okay. We've had a couple people that's been ill, and I think one of our council members west of Tulsa's got some bad weather, so they will not be here. We'll see if we can't keep them informed of what's going on today. Okay, at this time, I'd entertain approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Okay, welcome to our Rules Committee meeting here. Reports, Marshal Shannon Buell. It's glad to hear that you're over the flu.
I am over the flu. It was a horrible experience. I wouldn't wish that on an enemy. Good afternoon. One of the things I want to bring out on the report for this month is we have 2 new ALICE instructors. ALICE instructor is a person that come in and instruct employees, staff on how to best handle active shooter situations. We've been doing this now for about a year, and with the things that are happening around the country, we decided to get 2 more staff trained on it. And there's another training in Edmond into March that we're going to send 2 more. So at the end of this, we might have about 6 that can go out to communities, can go out to, we've been to clinics, we've been to the CDC, we've been to different organizations within the tribe, and we're offering it to all the departments at the tribe. We think it's important. It at least gives employees tools that might help them in a critical situation. So that's one of the odd things that I normally don't have in my report. Is there anything that anybody has for me on the report?
How are we protected? I know you guys keep your pulse on our local schools and the complex and all of our, the facilities that we have here. That's a major undertaking. But Sequoia High School, how are we prepared there?
We actually started when I took over. I've always believed that you should have armed professionals in schools. If you think about it, if you fly from Tulsa to LA tomorrow, chances are you're going to have an armed professional on that plane. Either you're going to have an air marshal, or more than likely you're going to have an airplane pilot that is armed. Airplane pilots now can go through it's like a 2-week certification at FLETC to learn all the use of force, the appropriateness of force, and all the stuff you need to know to be an armed professional. And then they carry a little box that's got a fingerprint pad on it that has their firearm so you'll see a pilot has a little box. That's what he or she has. So I believe that I've seen them, there are evil people in this world. They are. The only way to stop evil people sometimes is a good person with the ability to do that. So early on, we went with Sequoia High School, met with the administration. They were very open to us putting a marshal in the school. We looked at maybe armed security. We looked at maybe just a regular SRO. And quite frankly, I wanted somebody that's been on the street, that had to place people in custody, has maybe had to fight that person, has maybe had to use less than lethal force, has maybe had to draw their gun and point it at somebody in their past to come protect our kids. At the time, my stepson was a student at Sequoia School. It was very personal for me. So we've had that. I believe that Sequoia is very, very fortunate to be able to have not only an armed security person, but a full-time marshal that has done the job of a marshal. And I have great confidence in John Timothy that if something bad happens there, he will be more than capable to handle this. Not only that, we have everybody knows that we have highly trained men and women. A lot of veterans in the Marshal Service. A lot of combat veterans in the Marshal Service. One of my young marshals is a decorated Purple Heart recipient. We cover such a large area, and we live such a long distance from each other. Not every marshal doesn't live in Tahlequah. We have them in Pryor and Owasso and Roland and around. So we allow those marshals to have all the equipment that they would need all the time for those issues. So let's say a marshal's here, he might not even be working, but he can hear a call from Tahlequah City High School or Fort Gibson or Sequoia and hear this on the radio, and will have the tools that he or she needs to go and help that situation. So we try to be a force multiplier in those communities that we live in, those communities we call home, or even those communities that we pass through on our way home or to the office. So we've always been at the Marshal Service, been very proactive on the protection of our citizens and those citizens that are around us. It's, when we look at the Cherokee Nation as a marshal, we don't just look at Indian country. We have Cherokees that don't live on Indian country. My mother's one of those. A very proud Cherokee has never lived on Indian country or restricted land. So we look at the whole community. What can we do to best? We have action plans for NSU. Northeastern State University is right here. We have action plans with the college or the university on if something happens, how can we get to that location? How can we do those things to protect those people? So.
That's good. That's good to hear because of what the incidents that are taking place, and I just wanted to hear what the plan was, and it's a good plan. We appreciate that. Yes, Councilor Buzzard?
Just a couple of things. At our casinos, especially Hard Rock, when they have concerts, how many marshals do we usually assign to that place up there?
Quite frankly, it depends on the concert. It depends on if we have any concerns. Let's say one of the concerns is when we have fight night there. When they watch the UFC, there's always people that want to hit each other in the face, I'm afraid. So on those nights, we might have 2 or 3 marshals that go up there for those bigger events. Now, let's say, I don't want to upset anybody, but let's say Willie Nelson's playing. You might have one marshal walk through, and it's maybe because he likes Willie Nelson, but he'll go up there and make sure that the security staff are supported and do that. So it depends on what that event is, how many people we're expecting, quite frankly, what kind of people we're expecting at those events. If we have a classical guitarist, we don't need a lot of marshals there. If we have some craziness, then yes, we need them. So it'll go from 1 to 3.
Do they, the CNP, do they pay you anything? Do they, in lieu of marshals being there, do you get any money?
We do have
in your budget for that?
We do have a contract with CNE. That contract was actually raised this year. I don't want to misspeak and tell you the exact numbers. I don't have the exact, but the ballpark around $700,000 a year up until last year, and we got 1.6 million. So it is a substantial increase from CNE, CNB. So, but we don't. Let's say Friday night, let's say it's fight night, and we need marshals there. CNE doesn't give us extra money for those 3 marshals being there on Friday night. That's just part of that contract, right?
Okay.
Yeah. And in the contract, it also pays for if they need any specialized training for their security staff, we can do that as well.
Do you have a specific investigator that does investigation for the Attorney General's office? How does that work? If the Attorney General
No,
has something, how, do you do the investigation on it?
it depends, okay?
And, I mean, I thought you did all the investigations, you don't?
The Attorney General's office can do a special prosecutor.
Okay.
But it's very rare that that happens. Generally, let's say we have a burglary at a smoke shop, okay? We have investigation side of the house, we have patrol side of the house. The investigation side of the house handles higher level tribal crime and federal crime. They're the ones that know the U.S. attorneys by name, have lunch with them, have a swipe card to the federal building, can present high-level federal cases to federal court, which is pretty tough to do. They work everything from a burglary to murders to rapes to wherever. Those investigators work daily with the Attorney General's office. They're not assigned to the Attorney General's office. They don't report to the Attorney General's office. It's more of a mutual working relationship like we would have with any DA around. So, no, we don't have a marshal assigned to the
But
agency.
they're under your command?
They're under mine,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, every investigator we have, I do have an investigator assigned to C&E. They don't report to C&E, they report to us, we control them, but he's assigned to, C&E has a lot of counterfeit comes in. So he helps with that. He processes any crimes that are higher than a patrol officer would do in the casinos. I actually did that job whenever I was a deputy marshal here for about 3 years. I was assigned to C&E. I had an office at Hard Rock. I would get up in the morning, I'd get my patrol car, and I'd go to Hard Rock, and I'd work criminal cases there, anywhere from embezzlements to, somebody comes up and steals one of those ticket cards from an elderly lady in the casino or something like that. That's what that person handles, so. Does that answer that maybe?
Yeah, that's a better understanding of what your duties are. This accident that happened in Tahlequah,
Yes.
what kind of ramifications? Are we looking at anything with that, or?
Well, anytime you have a tragedy, okay? I thought if you got to see the news report that the DA put out about a week and a half ago, he applauded our officer. It was not a high-speed pursuit that caused it. My officer did everything appropriately, and the DA spoke to that, thank goodness. The initial stuff that came out from another agency did not say that, and it was because that agency at the time didn't have the information. So even though my officer did everything right, I jokingly say this, but it's not really a joke. Police work is pretty much the only job you can do everything right in and still get in trouble, or still lose your job, or still get sued. And I don't know that we'll be sued or not. If the family names us in a lawsuit, then the Attorney General's office will handle it like we do. We do get lawsuits periodically throughout. I've been here 18 years, it'll be 18 years in August, and I've been sued numerous times. Never have lost one, thank goodness, knock on wood, because we try to do stuff appropriately. Sometimes things happen that we have to go in front of a judge and talk about. This might be one of those. I don't know that, but I can tell you that we did a very complete investigation. BIA was notified, they're on track. Tahlequah City, OHP was part of it, and the DA's office. So anytime we have anything like this, or an officer-involved shooting, we don't just hold on to it. We have other agencies come in and help us investigate it, so we want to be as open and honest. We want our community to be at least aware that we're trying to do the right thing every time. And in this case, like I said, my officer did everything right, and it ended in horrible, horrible tragedy. This, by all accounts, she is a lovely lady, a lovely community member. She was on her way to jury duty in Cherokee County, and it's a horrible thing that happened. So we'll see. I know the DA is very, very motivated to get him prosecuted. We put my guys were looking for him. He checked himself out of the hospital before Tahlequah could get an arrest warrant for him, and it was us and the U.S. Marshals. The U.S. Marshals out of the Western District of Arkansas, or I'm sorry, Missouri, found him in Knoll, Missouri. Got him arrested, and we're getting him back here. So the DA is very on board. We're a part of that investigation, and hopefully it's not going to bring her back. So I don't even want to say we're going to get justice. I don't want to say that. He's going to answer for what he did. But it won't bring this mother, this wife back in this community, so.
Okay, sounds good, thank you. Thanks.
Counselor Warner.
Yes, sir, thank you. Well, I'm really glad to see the Alice instruction. We went through it. We've got our director of campus police, Carl Albert. He's an Alice instructor, and he come down. If you haven't been through that, I encourage you to try to join. I don't know how many on council. Anybody been in through Alice training? It's a new way to look at what what entails getting into an active shooter situation. And but I wanted to say, if there's ever anything, I know we've got a lot of places in Sequoyah County. We got the clinic and we've got other offices. If you need some support or whatever, I'd be willing to contact Mr. Chad Brown. He's our director of campus police, and see if he could come up and assist. And it's always good for him. I want him to be able to see it from your perspective as well, and that way maybe you guys can come back and we can do a refresher on our campus as well.
Well, if you don't mind, just text me his number.
Okay.
I can get with Shauna Roach. She's our kind of the head of the Alice program. She's the one that gets to pick the instructors she wants to work under her. And I can get,
Yeah, you bet.
they can hook up and maybe do
Okay.
some
Absolutely.
training together.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Speaker.
Okay, anybody else? Thank you, good report.
Thank you.
Office of Attorney General, Chrissy Nemo. And that's not Chrissy Nemo, but we're good.
Good afternoon, I'm John Young. I'm here for Chrissy Nemo on behalf of the Attorney General. We have two short things to announce to the council. As the council may be aware, the D.C. Circuit Court entered its order in the Friedman case. We provided a copy of that order to your council. I believe she's had time to look at it, distribute it. There's probably not too much I can say about the substance of the order, since it's also the subject of ongoing litigation here in our Cherokee Nation Supreme Court. Nonetheless, that's what we have to report on that issue. It is with your council, and like I said, if you don't have a copy, let us know and we'll get it to you. The other thing is we have another lawsuit that's been filed against the nation challenging one of the Attorney General's opinions with respect to term limits. We entered that about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago. It's ongoing litigation, so we can't talk about it, but it is a Cherokee citizen who's challenged the efficacy of our opinion. So I assisted in drafting that. We stand by it. We think we're on good ground, but it's an ongoing case. Just wanted to let you know about it.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Young here? Yes, Counselor Lay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Young, you say you've sent us some information or
To your attorney.
to our,
Correct.
thank you.
Okay, good report.
Thank you.
Gwen Terrapin?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
So far for 2008 or 18, behind the times here, we've had one FOIA request, and yesterday I received a GRA request, so we've only got two so far, and only one of those is outstanding, which is the GRA request. And the website's been updated, and I'm still doing some work on it, and going to be doing some updates on the Attorney General's website as a whole. And that's all that I have.
Any questions for Ms. Terrapin? You know, we really appreciate what you've done, because I think before you came on board, we were really behind in our request. I
Well,
mean,
there was a lot.
there was a lot of catch up to do, so commend you and your staff.
Thank you.
Sharon Swepson, Tax Commission. Always count on Sharon.
Afternoon. I believe you do have my report. If you have any questions, I'll try to address them.
Yes, Counselor Buzzard?
Sharon, I brought it up at some other committee meeting, but I wanted to bring it up to your attention. I had a couple of people call me about the ag office in Jay, about handicap ramps. This guy is in a motorized wheelchair, and he said he cannot get in there. I think they eventually got him to where he could go around and come into the office at the back way to get into it. But you may want to take a look at that. The way the parking lot is up there, it's gravel parking lot
Right.
with ties around it. There's no way to access that unless you go back out into the highway and go through the career services office to get in there. Anyway,
Okay.
you may want to take a look at that and see if there's something we can do to make the access a little bit better for some handicapped people.
From the parking lot's what you're saying, because there is a ramp on that side.
Yeah,
And
but what
everything.
you're saying, he pulls into the parking lot, and it's really difficult to handle
Yeah,
one
I
of those
think what we,
wheelchairs because of the gravel in the
right.
parking lot.
I
Then he
think-
has to go all the way out into the street, back
Right.
around and get in.
I think what we had agreed to before we built that parking lot is there's a smaller parking lot there that's got a couple of handicaps right there next to the apartments. And that's usually where the handicap ones would park is there, and there's a sidewalk there to be able to get up. But I'll check on it and
Yeah,
see.
I don't know, I can't, I know
I'd
the
have to go
parking
back.
lot you're
It's been
talking
a
about. I
while.
don't- It seems like there's a
Is there something there?
porch
I
is
need to go
like a
up there and
foot
look.
tall or something, but anyway.
But I will check on it and see if
I'll
we can
take a
get it
look at it
fixed.
through the next time I'm up there.
Okay.
Okay.
I appreciate
I
it.
just wanted to bring that to your attention.
We'll see if we can get it fixed.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Do we have handicap ramps to most of our others? I thought we did.
Yeah, and we have a ramp there. What he's saying is it's an issue because the parking lot's gravel and actually getting to the sidewalk to get to the ramp
Okay.
is the issue, if I understand correctly. Is that right?
Okay.
But then I don't know if there's a ramp going up to that or not, going up to the, because it's.
That little
porch is
sidewalk right
about a
there.
foot tall, so I'll just have to look too.
Yeah. Well, I know we built a ramp on the end of the sidewalk or the end of the porch there, but I'm not sure about coming from the parking lot. So I'd have to
Okay.
check on that.
All right. Anybody else? And you're ready for March the 2nd?
Yeah. We are ready.
Okay, all right.
Schools, I'm sure, will be thrilled, so.
They will be.
We hope
Yes.
that it all turns out really well, and the schools, I know, always appreciate it. So,
Yes, it is. Good report, Sharon.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, self-governance, Karen Ketcher.
I'm here.
We're gonna dock her, but she's here today.
I'm here.
You have my report. If you've got any questions, I'd be glad to answer them if I can.
Yeah, I just
Go
want,
ahead.
Aaron, do we know when the settlement is coming down from the, our unfunded stuff? I know we awarded it, but we don't know, haven't heard.
No. And or at least I haven't heard from finance if it's coming in, and I haven't seen it.
All right, I'll ask the
Okay.
finance people when they come in and see. Okay, thanks, sir.
Okay, any questions? You did good, Karen, thank you. Jamie Hummingbird, Gaming Commission. Good to see you, Jamie.
It's good to be seen. Although I'm a little heartbroken I didn't hear you can't always count on Jamie like you did count on Sharon, but I'll take what I can get.
Okay.
In addition to the information that is in your packet, there's a couple of things I wanted to make the council aware of. The audited financials for FY 2017 have been submitted on time. The audit was another clean audit again this year, but we did get that submitted to the NIGC on time as well as to the state. There were a couple of bills floating around the Oklahoma Capitol earlier this month. I believe only one bill is really being looked at as being active, and it is a bill that would introduce a change to our compact in the sense that we would be looking at having games offered that would eliminate the prohibition against wheels and a ball as well as dice. That means that tribes under an amended or a supplemental to the compact would be able to play real versions of craps and roulette. They would still be non-house banked, but they would look and feel and play exactly like they would in any other Class 3 jurisdiction. That bill has been sent to committee. It's been read. I don't know if it has made it out of committee. I checked just before coming in here. There was no update as of last week, so that is something I'm going to keep my eye on, just because if that does become a reality, then what would have to happen if the tribe wants to take advantage of that opportunity is that the process would work just like the previous compact process. A supplemental agreement would be signed off on by the tribes. It would be sent into the BIA for ratification, and once it was ratified and published in the Federal Register, the tribes would be able to then employ those changes. So for right now, we are still working off the card-based games version of those games. But if this bill does become a reality, then we can do away with the cards and introduce real bones to throw and the real ball and wheel to watch. So with that, if there are any questions, oh, I'm sorry, there's one more. The Supreme Court is expected to rule any time on the legality of PASPA, the Professional Amateur Sports Protection Act. In case you haven't heard of PASPA, when Chris Christie was the governor of New Jersey, he had challenged the legality of that because the state of New Jersey wanted to offer sports wagering within the state. That case was granted cert by the Supreme Court last year. There were arguments held on December the 4th, I believe, of last year. And the scuttlebutt over the last week or so is that they are getting ready to issue a ruling. I checked on that yesterday. No ruling has been handed down as of yesterday. I've signed up for an alert to get copied on that ruling once it does get handed down, and so far today I haven't gotten any notice. That's important for a number of reasons, because there are a number of states across the country that are looking at whether or not they're going to allow sports wagering within their jurisdiction. Some states have already enacted proviso bill language that would allow their state gaming commissions to write rules and to begin offering sports wagering should federal law allow it. That language is already in existence right now. It's kind of held in abeyance. It's kind of in limbo unless and until the federal law changes. But there are a number of jurisdictions that are looking to do that. And it could be something that the state of Oklahoma, I'm not sure if they're going to be inclined to do that or not, but if they are, then that could be another issue for tribes to think about. But until that decision's handed down, we won't know for sure. The consensus, somewhat consensus, is that the Supreme Court will rule against PASPA, but there's always that outside chance that they will uphold PASPA. So we will just kind of have to wait and see. But it should be something, hopefully in the very near future, hopefully by the next Rules Committee, I can give you an update on as to whether or not that ruling has been handed down.
Interesting.
With that, take any questions you might have.
Any comments or questions? Yes, if you know, would you explain briefly how that project in the Panhandle came to be with 2 or 3 tribes involved that got land put into trust?
That one I don't know too much about. I do know that the tribes did take or I think it was the, I'm trying to remember which ones they
Shawnee
were.
tribe.
Excuse me?
Shawnee tribe.
The Shawnee tribe.
Out of the jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm. And
Sponsored by the Chickasaws out of their jurisdiction.
that, when I had just learned about that about a week or so ago, and I haven't delved too deeply into that, other than that the fact that they were trying to, I think they were arguing the historical nexus or historical lands
Okay.
angle, if you will, or the side of things when they're looking at getting land into trust, but I'm not sure very much of the particulars behind that one.
Okay, that was interesting how it all came together.
Yeah, Guyman is going to be an interesting place to be pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, good report, Jamie.
Thank you very much.
Human Resources, Nathan Morton.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
In addition to my written report, we've had some progress in automation and making the filling out forms easier on the applicant. If you're a current Cherokee Nation employee and you were interested in another job within Cherokee Nation, we'd have you fill out this blue form. You come get it, fill it out, and then drop it off. We figured out a way to use the existing system for current employees to use the application process online. So it cut out several steps, and your information was already in the system. So basically, you check in and do it online, and it's a much easier process. You don't have to duplicate the process. It's not available to our other entities yet, but for current Cherokee Nation employees who want to apply within Cherokee Nation, it is available. We sent out an email regarding how to do it, and if anyone has any questions, they can just call into the main number and we'll walk you through it. Also, at the main HR building, if you happen to notice, we have a chain link fence around one side. We're getting a handicap accessible ramp put in, making it much more convenient, and I appreciate them doing that for us. Are there any questions?
The application you're talking about, does that expedite the process for people that are currently employed here if they want to make a switch to various departments?
It makes it much easier for them to not to have to try to locate the form, fill it out by hand, and either fax it, send it back, or drop it off. They now just can type it into the system using their existing login, and it should be much easier.
Okay.
We've been trying it a couple months now, and we always try to improve. So if anyone has any difficulty with it, please call us and we'll make sure it's working right.
Will do. Any questions?
Nathan, I was just looking at your report. It's on page 21 if you're looking at it. We're given the percent Cherokees hired, percent of Indians hired. Can you add another line and just say non-Indians?
Yes, I can
Maybe
put one
hard or
in.
not hard, and probably it's going to be zero most
Yes.
of the time. Just add another line.
So basically, we can give the 100% on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Good report.
Okay.
We dropped it down to old business. Counselor Vasquez, you have that one?
Yes, first, sir, I would like to make an amendment, this is not. Okay. The handout that everyone should have, I would make a motion to amend the one that's in the book, one change on it.
Okay.
It's on page 29, anyway, I move for that.
Do you have anybody here that can explain that?
Yes, John.
Okay.
We need a second for that.
Just explain what that amendment is.
On page 29 of the text you have, it's in a paragraph in blue. It was a provision I added after consultation with your council. There was concern about who would be, or if we were to serve an investigatory demand on somebody, who could we serve it on? What protections do they have? There was a question of if we were to ever serve one on council.
John, let me interrupt you. We got a motion. Do we get a second on that? Okay, got a motion?
Second.
Second. Okay. Now,
Take where I left off?
yes.
There was a question of what we do in the process when we serve a council member. If we were to ever serve a council member, and I don't know why we would, it would have to actually go to the court. The court would have to review what we have, find that there's good cause for us to give you the request. It would, of course, go through your attorney. If it's overly broad or any concern like that, we would then work that out, and of course, the court would have ultimate say over it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Yes, Counselor Lay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that was on page 29, and that was just added to the other language, I think. Is that what you've done?
It's on page 29, it's in blue, and it's added to the language we had from the previous version.
Okay. And so the AG is not here today with you?
He's out on travel today.
And the assistant AG, number one, I guess you all are assistants, but
We're all assistants.
Are-
Miss Nemo's out on travel as well.
I've got some problems with, especially with this, I think it's called Section 30, would that be correct? Am I referring to it correctly?
The investigations by the Attorney General? Yes, sir, that's correct.
What page is that on?
What page is that on?
Starts on 26.
26, it starts at 26 and ends where, on 30? It, and I think I know what happens now on investigations, but it seems the Attorney General and the AG's office is taking on a lot of new responsibilities in this section and almost becoming judge, jury, and executioner, if you will. That may be a little overstatement, but it seems to be that rather than checks and balances and due process where I think that you have now, that the AG's office assumes a lot of those duties. And if I'm incorrect, I could be, let me know. But you say you don't know why you would ever investigate a counselor. Has it not been done?
To my knowledge, it hasn't been done in this body.
Are you sure?
Certainly not on provisions of this, not any one of these types of investigations.
I understand. But investigations have been done to citizens and to elected officials. Are you not aware of that?
If there's a criminal case that's investigated by the Marshal Service, we would then prosecute
I
after
understand,
that.
but the Marshal just said a few minutes ago that those two offices work together.
That's correct.
Yes. And so here's where I'm coming from. Without the AG and the Assistant AG being here, who were here when that happened, or may have happened, or may not have happened, I'm a little curious as to why we're still looking at this today when the Attorney General himself, if you will, is not here to explain it, because you weren't there, I think, during some of that time period.
I believe this was initially submitted to the council back in November.
I understand.
We've had it for a
but-
while.
But it's been amended.
Right, we did add that clause in there.
And this is the first time that I think it's been fully discussed.
Well, we added the clause, and I mentioned in the discussion we had a few weeks ago about this bill, so it's been in there for a while.
And this is the first time it's being discussed to be passed on.
I think this is the first time you've had public discussion on it before this
Right.
body. Like I said, it went up in November, and it's been kicked a couple times.
And so, of course, counselors have had issue with this act. Whenever something is brought to us or to me with wholesale changes, a whole bunch of red lines, a whole bunch of new wording, it reminds me of an act that we passed that deleted the Whistleblower Act. We had no idea we were deleting the Whistleblower Act. It was referred to by section and not by name. This body then had to go back later, once we found that out, and reinstate the Whistleblower Act. These counselors who were there at that time, myself included, would have never deleted an employee right. And so whenever I see, something this thick, and the other one is just as thick almost, forgive me, I'm a little bit suspect, and I start reading and I start asking our counselor what's going on, and so when I read the Section 30, and I read it thoroughly, and it seems to me the AG's office taking on more responsibilities and taking away and usurping some of the duties of the courthouse. That's just my opinion, personal opinion. And without the Attorney General and the Assistant AG being here at this point in time, I'm curious, is it your intention to ask for this to be voted on today?
Yes, is my understanding. I also have a comment when.
Okay, I would like to make a motion to delete Section 30 of this act, put that in form of a motion, Chief.
Second.
We're in discussion. Yes.
question.
Go ahead.
John, doesn't this give authority to the AG that, or his office, similar powers to what the state currently has?
This mirrors the powers the feds and states have, and as a technical matter, it doesn't create any new authority. It changes the process by which we would already do this. This is a process we could already go through on any type of one of these claims we investigate or file. What this does is it takes it out of being a court case. We issue a letter to get the information we need, and it stays confidential. Now, if there's a suit that's filed as a result of our investigation, that becomes public record. But this just formalizes a process that we already use. But it makes it a little quieter, if you will, because we send a letter to them, we don't file a court case, we don't issue a subpoena, and then it stays with us and it stays confidential unless there's a lawsuit filed.
I'd like to ask our counsel, Selena, would you come up, please? Do you have any legal concerns regarding this Section 30?
Well, I reviewed this section several times, and this is used, he's correct, this is used in nearly every state jurisdiction. It's used by the federal government, whether it be the Federal Trade Commission, different agencies within the federal government. I was unable to find any tribal jurisdictions that are currently using this. That's not to say that they aren't. There's a couple of advocacy agencies who are promoting the passage of consumer protection laws, and a couple of them have some model codes. My concerns with Section 30 have to do with the definition of public office or public official and how that applies. I think that there's something called the speech and debate clause, which gives public officials and elected officials, this body, some protections against some of the things that they could ask for. So there are definitely some protections there if a civil investigatory demand in the form of a subpoena were issued. There's a ton of caveats to that. With Section 30, the other issue, and John may be able to answer this question, it applies to any violation of the Comprehensive Access to Justice Act. So my concern is, what does that encompass, that total act? I believe that the intent of it is to cover the deceptive practices. But when it says Comprehensive Access to Justice Act, I want that to be clear as to what that civil investigatory demand applies to.
If you read them together, if you read the two clauses together, the civil investigatory demands only relate back to the deceptive practices in Section 25, which are on page 15. So it would be limited to our investigation of those acts that, like I said, start on 15 and continue over to 16. Those more or less deal with deceptive marketing practices and product liability claims. My sense is they would be used a lot for looking into the types of generic drugs we buy and medical devices.
Next speaker, next question.
I wanted one more thing from Selena, if you don't mind. Well, doesn't that, the blue language, the new language, address the concern or resolve your concerns? There's nothing different except this blue part.
Are you talking?
The page 29, the language, doesn't that amendment resolve your concerns that you had before that was there?
I'm comfortable with that language being in there. That gives you protections. I mean, there's not going to be a situation where you're going to offer up that information without a subpoena through the court.
It still has to go to the district court, correct?
Tribal court.
District court.
Tribal district court.
Okay,
Correct, if it were to go to a council member.
sure. Before we go any further in discussion, we had a motion, we had a second for this. Then we came back and then we had a motion to delete section 30. Okay, let's address that before we move on. Got a motion to delete section 30.
But our first motion was not.
We'll come back to that. We've got to address whether his motion to delete section 30 is going to stand. That's what, yeah.
Harley seconded it.
Artie, you second it?
I didn't hear it.
Okay, we didn't hear that. Okay, so now, continue.
I have a question.
Councilor Walkenstead.
Thank you, Speaker. I understand the state has the same regulations for the Attorney General to authorize an investigation. And I haven't researched other tribes and what their Attorney General's duties are. My concern is the checks and balances on our Attorney General and doing an investigation or having to do an investigation on our Attorney General. You know, when I first got in to the seat, there was some stuff that happened with the AG that caused some concern and doubt in my confidence in him to serve as our AG. And, you know, reading this section 30, I don't feel comfortable giving this authority to our Attorney General due to my lack of confidence in his moral compass or his character per se. I know this is a state national procedure for Attorney Generals, which they may have checks and balances for their Attorney Generals. There may be an investigation process for an appointed position. I don't know if our tribe has checks and balances or accountability for something of that nature for our appointed positions. You know, whenever I'm reading this, investigations by the Attorney General, I would be more comfortable to say investigation by the Tribal Council. The Tribal Council should be the one that, if we see there may be foul play or something, we should be able to be the ones to initiate an investigation. You know, so those are my drawbacks from this legislation is lack of confidence in the AG. If we had an AG that was held accountable and had character and moral compass, I would probably be more.
We can't really get into too much personal.
I'm not going to go into detail, Speaker.
I appreciate that.
Okay, but I won't be able to support this due to those reasons. You know, like I said, if we had a different Attorney General, I could support this, but I just feel like we're giving our Attorney General more power that he doesn't need or deserve. So that's all I have. Thank you, Speaker.
Yes, Councilor Austin.
Currently, I believe I understand that this authority is there, it's just assumed based on the standing law of the state, federal, and so forth. So if you had to do this type of investigation, you would end up referring to those jurisdictions in order to find guidance.
Do it for guidance. It'd be a lot clumsier process for us. Part of the problem we run into is any investigation we do like this, if there were ever a federal district court that will look at what we did, they're going to look at our code and they're going to measure it by how it measures up against a state or a federal process in the same thing. Like I said, this is all common law stuff that we can do right now. This just makes it a lot cleaner and it keeps it confidential in the event there's not a lawsuit that's brought from it.
So it becomes our process that we can amend or adapt if we see issues with our process instead of going off of a third party's process. And right now, really, we're working with a third party's process.
We're basing our process kind of ad hoc, borrowed from federal and state.
Now, anything in here that's unique to us beyond the blue words, is everything in here pretty much stuff that it's been used in other jurisdictions? We've pulled from other jurisdictions that have been used successfully in those jurisdictions.
It has. It's all been modeled after other jurisdictions.
So it's been modeled, and I think I understand the motivation of this. It's been, nothing in here is unique beyond the blue words, I believe, are probably unique to us.
There were probably places where we needed to tweak it to make it Cherokee Nation specific, but as for the general thrust of it, it's borrowed from state and federal code.
Okay. Well, it's a complicated issue, obviously, because it takes a lot of words to say this kind of stuff.
Yes, true.
But if we must be willing to take on complicated stuff at times, and if we're going to get stalled every time we have a complicated issue, we're not going to accomplish much.
Agreed.
Okay, anybody else? Yes, Councilor Warner?
So so right now, the motion is to strike section 30. If that happens, what does it look like for you? I mean, on this, what does that do to this entire, everything that we've got here?
It makes it a lot messier for us. Like I said, these are still powers that we exercise. Say if we were to investigate a price fixing claim involving drugs that we purchase, that's to protect our money, our interest. We can do this type of investigation. We're going to run into problems, though, when we're piecing it together ad hoc. This makes it a lot cleaner if we ask for an investigation demand to say, and here's our authority to do this. By the way, it's confidential, rather than having to borrow from multiple sources.
Did everybody here get a chance to meet about this legislation before? I mean, did we? I mean, I know there were meetings set up. I went to one. I was just checking to see if I was the only one or if we. I mean, and I don't get a lot of the speculation calls and stuff like that, so I don't know what's on the other side of where we're at, but I was just checking. I just wanted to make sure that, everybody had afforded that opportunity. I know that it doesn't fit everybody's schedule, and my schedule looks rough as it is, but just checking. All right. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Critton.
So there wasn't any other tribal Attorney General's offices that look similar to this?
Not that I'm aware of, but some tribes don't have their codes online, and so I'm not saying that there's not any. And correct me if I'm wrong, back to the civil investigatory demand, John. This is something that is granted to the states by statute. I don't think that this is something that just is automatically afforded to the Attorney General's office by common law. I know the states have this in their statute. It's a statutory grant of authority.
The statutes create the process, like we've done here. It is a common law thing, though. If we were to sue somebody who would hypothetically be overpricing drugs that we're overpaying for, we would then go file a lawsuit. These are the same types of things. It's a lot more cumbersome, though. So we have to go file an official lawsuit and bear the cost of that. This puts it in a system where we can write them a letter and keep it confidential.
Right, correct. I mean, you can do that, but
That is a common law function.
But this function gives you the statutory right to do this pre-lawsuit.
To do it before the lawsuit, yeah, it makes it a lot less cumbersome.
Joe,
Yes, Councilor Vasquez.
I would like to ask for administration's view on this, Mr. Secretary, if you could.
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on.
Chairman.
Let her finish what she's asking.
I would just like to ask the Secretary to come to the front and get their view on what's being discussed.
Okay. Well, he had a question first. Let's get back to Councilor Lake.
And thank you, and I'll try to be brief, Mr. Chairman, appreciate it. First of all, I think this is the council, this is not the administration. So the other thing is that, John, I think you guys are going maybe down the right road on price fixing, consumer protection, those We understand those things. You need to probably separate those out from Cherokee citizens somehow. You're the smart guys, you figure it out, okay, if you can do it, and I think you can. I will tell you this, that I've been an observer and/or involved with this tribe for decades. And heaven help us that politics ever breaks out in the Cherokee Nation. And so when you give one individual who's highly political and who has screamed at this body during committee meetings and who has, that's it, done other things that were highly political, all of a sudden to give that person or that group this kind of unfettered power and the checks and balances aren't there. When you allow you guys to go do your investigations, you don't have to go to the courthouse to get a subpoena, you don't have to go to the courthouse to get the things that you're supposed to be doing now. I don't know that you are, but you're supposed to be doing when you investigate. To get permission from a guy in a robe or a lady in a robe. The AG's office don't wear robes. None of you do. I keep telling the general this. He keeps trying to put a robe around himself sometimes. And that's where I think we're going here. And you all need to separate those out, and then I'll vote for it. But I don't think that when you include citizens and elected officials and appointed officials in your price fixing and consumer protection juggernaut, which is what this is, boy, this really, and I don't know how many times I've heard the general himself say, I don't care what the state of Oklahoma does, this is the Cherokee Nation. We need to do it our way. And you all probably need to separate those out, and that's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Good point. Okay. Anybody else? Councilor Austin?
So Dick, are you suggesting we table so that they can bring it back differently?
Well, my motion right now is to delete this section because it includes too much. It's too much power, not only on the price fixing and the consumer protection, which is where I think that mostly they want to go. It's too much power against the citizens, and I'm one of them. And like I said, heaven help us if politics ever breaks out in the Cherokee Nation. In the 1999 convention, we went through something like this, that a bunch of lawyers wanted to do capital punishment through the Cherokee Nation. And an individual, a young man, jumped up and said, heaven forbid that the Cherokee Nation ever has authority over my living and dying, because he was one of those people who quite often is against about anything. And so he's got a right to speak any way he wants to as a citizen. And so that, I recall that when I read this. I read this several times, and then I recalled back to 99 convention. And I think that if you can separate those out, John, somehow, and I know you can do it, and protect our citizens and go after these folks that I think that you're trying to get after, I'd vote for it, okay?
I think
That's where I'm at.
the intent though with the way it's written now was they want to file a lawsuit
I
against
don't know what
citizens.
the intent is, but I know what the wording is.
Right.
And the wording is going to could possibly lead somebody down the wrong road. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, anybody else? It appears like we need a little bit more time. If that would be the wishes of the council, I'd say bring it back and maybe bring it back in a different form. That's just a recommendation I'm making. We can do the voting, we got 2 motions and second, or we could bring it back next time.
I'd like to make motion that, well, you've already did.
If I could stipulate, Mr. Chairman, that I will temporarily pull mine, if she will temporarily pull hers and throw it back to the
Yes.
AG's office.
Okay, is that good? Okay.
Thank you.
Make a motion to table.
Let's make a motion to table, 30 days, bring it back. Is that good, committee? Need a motion?
Make a motion table.
Got a motion? Got a second? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? I think those are good recommendations, both sides here. Okay,
Thank you,
good,
Chairman.
John?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay. Okay, Counselor Taylor, you want to take the next one?
I do want to take the next one. This is a resolution confirming the reappointment of Elmer Tadpole as a governing board member of the Cherokee Nation Comprehensive Care Agency, or PACE, and I put that in the form of a motion.
Where is he?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Tadwell has the flu, couldn't be with us
Ouch.
today, and so if he's been on the board, he's done a good job, he's a fine public servant. If the body wishes to continue, certainly we'd encourage that, but we also understand that you like to have the nominees in front.
That's okay.
And so we certainly can hold over.
Sure. You got a motion? Did I hear a second? Second. Okay. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Mr. Tadpole did it without being here. That's pretty good. Okay, we have Counselor Brenda Thompson here. Counselor England, you want to take that?
Number 2.
Yes.
This is a resolution confirming the nomination of Brenda Thompson as an editorial board member of the Cherokee Nation Phoenix. I put that in form of a motion.
Okay. Got a motion?
Second.
Second? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Is she here? Yes, you want to say something, Ms. Thompson?
Well, it's nice to be here. I've never been to a council meeting before, so it's great. And I'm very pleased to be nominated for this position, so I appreciate it.
Okay. All right, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Okay, next, Counselor Vasquez.
This is a legislative act amending Title 12 of the Cherokee Nation Code annotated civil procedure. I move for its approval.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second? Any discussion? Yes, Counselor Lay?
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if this can be tabled to bring it in after we pass the other one. I think they're tied together.
It's a companion bill.
Second that. Okay, got a motion and second to table? All in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. Moving down, Counselor Dobbins.
Yes, last month I was unable to be with you because of our council meetings were changed, and I just wanted to raise the awareness of my fellow councilors that there are provisions in our rules of procedure regarding changing committee meetings. My intent, though, is just to hopefully emphasize the importance for us to keep our council meetings when they're scheduled, and if they have to be moved, we have to have a majority to change it. But I know a number of you have other obligations. My primary responsibility is to this body and to my constituents, but I have other responsibilities, and I try to move them around my Monday, Thursday responsibilities here. So, and we have people that are dependent on this schedule, and people that do the IT work. All the people that appeared here, their schedules are dictated by our council meeting time. So I just would like us to be that'd be very rare that we change a meeting time. I recognize too, though, on Mondays, I think about 1 out of 10 Mondays are holidays now. Yeah. And so I'd like for us to at least follow precedent. I know our October council meeting, we had the NCIA meetings and we moved it the following Monday. I'd like to, hopefully we could follow that precedent. By the way, I guess I tried to do a little research. The Monday council meeting was decided in a council meeting in 1993, 25 years ago. And so it's been kind of a long-standing tradition. So I guess my intent is just, let's be very reluctant, or may it be very rare that we change council meeting times, because it hit me last month. I couldn't be here because I just have other obligations. I know a lot of you have other responsibilities outside the council. And so I just wanted, that's just my intent today, just to relay that. Thank you, Speaker.
Point well taken. Yes, Counselor Critton.
Did we vote on Mrs. Thompson?
Yes. And she even gave a speech.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, she's a good hand. All right, any further comments or questions here? Walking stick?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Okay, a motion? Second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is that what you're-
No.